After 7 years of supporting his startup, my husband took me to court. You won't believe what happened. Welcome to our channel Stories TH. In this video, we explore the empowering journey of reclaiming your self-worth after life's most difficult challenges. Whether it's overcoming betrayal, rebuilding a career, or simply rediscovering your confidence, this story will inspire you to take control of your life again. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Stories TH for more inspiring content about reclaiming your self-worth and finding your true purpose. The unseen sacrifice, a life devoted to love, family, and dreams. Clara had always been a woman of ambition. In her 60s, she had already built a successful career in finance, with a solid reputation and the promise of even greater achievements ahead. Her future looked promising, secure, stable, and filled with opportunities. But everything changed when she met Daniel. At the time, Daniel was full of dreams. He had a vision for a startup that could revolutionize small businesses with a new inventory management system. His passion was contagious, and Clara, believing in his vision, was drawn into his world of possibilities. As their relationship deepened, Clara found herself caught between her own career and the growing demands of Daniel's business. At the beginning, it seemed like a partnership built on love, trust, and shared ambition. Daniel needed Clara's support, both emotionally and financially, to take his business from the drawing board to reality. Clara believed in him and, more importantly, she believed in the future they could build together. However, the more she gave, the more Daniel seemed to take. She found herself making sacrifices not just for him, but for his business. Clara, once a rising star in the financial world, chose to set aside her dreams, her ambitions, and her career to focus on Daniel's dreams. She didn't see it as a loss, but as an investment in the future they would share. She believed that one day, when the business succeeded, the rewards would be theirs to enjoy together. For 7 long years, Clara supported Daniel in every way imaginable. She left her promising career behind, stepping away from opportunities for advancement and growth. At first, she worked a job that seemed like a temporary setback, a position as an administrative assistant in a smaller company. But as the business grew, so did Clara's responsibilities. She took on more work, juggling multiple part-time jobs to help Daniel meet the growing financial demands of his startup. She worked as a waitress at a local diner, drove for a rideshare service, and handled accounting for small businesses in her spare time. Every day, she worked long hours, often starting at dawn and ending well into the night. The exhaustion began to take its toll, but Clara pushed through, telling herself that the sacrifices were worth it for Daniel's success. There were moments when Clara's doubts would surface. She would look around at the life she had built and wonder if she had given up too much. Her friends, once part of a vibrant social circle, began to fade away as Clara's time became consumed with Daniel's business needs. She had no time for herself and no space to nurture her own career or passions. While Daniel was growing his business, she was losing hers. The jobs she had taken were temporary, jobs that were far removed from her own skills and qualifications. There were nights when she would look at the mirror and wonder, what happened to the woman I used to be? But each time, she pushed those thoughts aside, focused on Daniel's dream, and reminded herself that the sacrifices were temporary. The light at the end of the tunnel was always there, just out of reach. As time passed, Clara's contributions to the business continued to grow. She wasn't just a financial supporter anymore. She was a part of the company in every sense of the word. She helped with bookkeeping, managing the cash flow, and keeping track of expenses. She became a sounding board for Daniel when he needed advice and a source of emotional support when things got tough. Daniel, on the other hand, became more and more focused on his vision, pushing harder for investors and business partners. Clara's role, although critical, became less visible. While Daniel began to hire more staff and take on a higher public profile, Clara stayed in the background, quietly supporting him from the sidelines. The turning point came when Daniel's startup began to show real promise. Investors took interest, and a breakthrough seemed imminent. The business finally began to turn a profit, and everything Daniel had dreamed of was becoming a reality. But for Clara, that success didn't feel like a victory. The more successful Daniel's business became, the more distant he became. The long hours he worked seemed to pull him further away from her. He hired a new executive assistant, a young woman named Rachel, who quickly became a prominent figure in the company. Clara, once the backbone of the startup, found herself sidelined not just in the business, but in her own life. Rachel seemed to be everything Clara was not: young, ambitious, and thriving in the world Daniel had created. And as Daniel's relationship with Rachel grew closer, Clara began to feel like a stranger in her own marriage. The isolation Clara felt was palpable. While Daniel reveled in the newfound success of his business, Clara quietly wrestled with feelings of neglect and resentment. She had given up her career, sacrificed her time, and worked tirelessly to help build something that was now thriving, but no one seemed to acknowledge her contributions. Clara, once an integral part of Daniel's life and business, had become invisible. She watched as Daniel moved into a new world, one that didn't include her. She questioned whether her sacrifices had been in vain. The woman who had once been at the top of her game in the financial world now felt like a forgotten ghost in the corner of Daniel's corporate empire. Then the unthinkable happened. Daniel filed for divorce. In the courtroom, he mocked Clara's contributions to his success, claiming that she had never truly worked in a real job. His words hit her like a blow to the chest. The man she had sacrificed everything for, the man she had believed in, now dismissed her as insignificant. Clara's heart sank as she realized how little her efforts meant to him. The courtroom, filled with Daniel's legal team and his mother, Barbara, was a cold, impersonal place. She had hoped for justice, but all she received was ridicule. The years of hard work, the late nights, and the countless sacrifices were reduced to nothing more than a footnote in Daniel's success story. But Clara wasn't about to let it end like that. In a moment of clarity, Clara remembered the prenuptial agreement she had insisted on signing during their trip to Paris years earlier. It had seemed like a precaution at the time, a safeguard for her financial contributions to the business. But Daniel, too distracted by his success and the celebrations of their honeymoon, had signed it without fully understanding its implications. The prenup, which recognized Clara's 49% ownership in the company, became her weapon. She had kept it hidden, tucked away for just this moment. Clara presented the prenuptial agreement in court, a move that caught Daniel and his legal team completely off guard. The courtroom fell silent as the reality of the situation set in. Clara, once invisible and dismissed, now held the power. She had fought for her place in Daniel's success story, and she was finally being recognized. The judge ruled in her favor, acknowledging Clara's rightful ownership in the company. Daniel's smug confidence evaporated, replaced by a stunned silence. The victory was bittersweet. Clara's years of sacrifice could not be undone, but she had regained control of her life. The man she had once loved had shown his true colors, and Clara was left with a hard-earned lesson. She was worthy of so much more than being a footnote in someone else's success story. She was strong, capable, and deserving of her own success. In the months that followed, Clara used her newfound strength to rebuild her life. She started her own financial consulting business, helping women entrepreneurs protect their assets and navigate the business world with confidence. She became a mentor, showing other women how to reclaim their power and build the futures they deserved. While Daniel continued his journey in the business world, Clara forged her own path, one built on the foundation of her own hard work, determination, and the knowledge that she no longer needed to hide in anyone's shadow. Clara's story is one of perseverance and self-discovery. It's a story of sacrifice, but also of reclaiming one's worth. For Clara, the journey didn't end with the success of Daniel's business. It began with the realization that her value was not tied to someone else's dreams. She had her own dreams, and she was finally living them. The strain of success, the growing distance in a relationship as John's startup began to gain momentum and secure its place in the business world. Martha couldn't help but feel increasingly invisible. The company that she had sacrificed her career and personal life for was thriving. Yet the success that should have brought them closer together seemed to be doing the opposite. In the early days of their relationship, everything had seemed aligned. Both John and Martha were driven by shared dreams, and they worked side by side toward building a future. Martha had believed that her sacrifices, the countless hours spent working multiple jobs to support John's business, would eventually pay off. But now, as the business grew more successful, the very foundation of their relationship began to crack. In the beginning, John had been a man full of passion and ambition, someone who believed in the future they were building together. The late nights discussing ideas, the shared excitement over small milestones, and the constant promises of a better tomorrow had kept Martha going. She had put everything on hold to support him, convinced that their love and their shared dream would lead to mutual success. But as time went on, things began to change in ways Martha didn't expect. As John's business took off, he became more absorbed in his work, and his attention began to shift away from her. He started staying late at the office more often missing dinner or their quiet evenings together. What had once been a partnership rooted in mutual support and respect now felt more like a one-sided arrangement, with Martha providing the emotional and financial backbone for a business that was no longer her own. Martha tried to understand. After all, building a business from the ground up wasn't easy. She knew John's drive, his ambition, and how much it meant for him to succeed. But as the company began to grow, it became clear that Martha's sacrifices were no longer appreciated or even acknowledged. John was changing, and Martha found herself becoming less and less a part of his world. The change was subtle, at first small, almost unnoticeable shifts in his behavior. But as time went on, those small changes grew into an undeniable distance between them. John began to spend more time with Rebecca, his new assistant, who was young, ambitious, and seemed to fit more seamlessly into the world he was creating. Rebecca had all the qualities that John admired: drive, intelligence, and a fresh perspective on the business. As the company grew, so did Rebecca's role, and it wasn't long before Martha noticed that John was relying on Rebecca more and more. What started as a professional relationship between them began to blur, and Martha couldn't help but feel the growing bond between them. Rebecca, who was younger, more energetic, and increasingly present in John's day-to-day operations, seemed to be taking up space that had once been Martha's. The long hours John spent at the office were no longer just about work. They were becoming opportunities for him to bond with Rebecca over projects and ideas, leaving Martha feeling like an outsider in her own marriage. It wasn't just the long hours or the late-night meetings. It was the small things that added up: the way John would speak about Rebecca with admiration, the inside jokes he shared with her that Martha was never included in, and the time they spent together outside of work. John would come home, sometimes late at night, speaking excitedly about something new Rebecca had suggested or a breakthrough they'd had together. Martha would listen, but it felt like a conversation happening in another world, a world that no longer included her. The small touches that had once been part of their relationship, holding hands, sharing a smile, a lingering hug, had faded into the background as the business took center stage. The more successful the business became, the more distant John became. Martha had always supported John's dream, but she had done so as his partner, not as a bystander. Now, she felt like a ghost in her own life. She would come home to an empty house more often than not, as John stayed at the office or went out with Rebecca for business dinners or meetings. The conversations that had once filled their evenings were replaced by silence, or worse, by casual mentions of Rebecca and the latest business developments. Martha tried to understand that this was a necessary part of the growing business, but it was hard to ignore the sting of being sidelined. She began to question whether the sacrifices she had made, giving up her career, working 3 jobs to support John's vision, had been worth it. The love she had once felt so strongly for John now seemed distant, replaced by feelings of frustration and confusion. Why was it that, after everything they had been through together, she felt more alone than ever? There were nights when Martha would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering where things had gone wrong. She had always believed in John's potential, and she had supported him unconditionally. But the more successful the business became, the more she felt like she was losing him, not just as a husband, but as a partner in life. The loneliness she felt was not just physical, but emotional. She missed the man she had married, the man who had once shared her hopes and dreams. Now, it felt as though the only thing that mattered to him was the business, and everything else, including her, was secondary. Martha tried to talk to John about her feelings, but the conversations were often met with indifference or frustration. "I'm just busy, Martha," he would say, dismissing her concerns. "We're building something big here. You knew what you were getting into." These words stung more than anything else. She hadn't expected him to understand her loneliness, but she had hoped he would recognize the toll his success was taking on their relationship. Instead, she was made to feel as though her feelings were irrelevant, as though her sacrifices were taken for granted. The deeper the wedge grew between them, the more Martha began to feel invisible, like a shadow that lingered in the background while everyone else basked in the spotlight. It wasn't long before Martha's insecurities started to take root. She began to wonder if Rebecca's growing closeness to John was more than just professional. She would catch glimpses of their interactions, the way Rebecca's eyes sparkled when John complimented her ideas, the way he leaned in a little too close when they spoke. Martha had never been the jealous type, but something about the way Rebecca had entered their lives felt like an intrusion. As the months passed, Martha couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their relationship than John was letting on. In those moments of doubt and fear, Martha's mind raced with questions. Was she losing John to someone younger, someone more suited to his new life? Was this what he had wanted all along? A partner who could keep up with the business, someone who could help him achieve his success without the baggage of personal commitments? Or was this just the inevitable consequence of pursuing a dream without considering the human cost? Martha felt trapped in a relationship that had once been full of promise, but was now plagued with uncertainty. She had given up everything for John's dream, and now it felt as though that dream was slipping away from her, taking him with it. The man she had supported through thick and thin was no longer the man she knew. The partnership they had once shared had been replaced by a business arrangement, where she was nothing more than a supporting character. She wasn't sure where to go from here, or even if she wanted to continue down this path. All she knew was that she couldn't keep living like this, feeling like a stranger in her own home, in her own life. The unraveling, divorce, betrayal, and the unseen weapon of a prenuptial agreement. The tension in Martha's life reached a breaking point when John, her husband of many years, filed for divorce. The pain of the filing was compounded by the way John chose to present their relationship in the courtroom. Instead of handling the situation with grace, he chose to publicly humiliate Martha, calling her nothing more than a gold digger, someone who was simply after his money. His words hit her like a sharp blow to the chest. The man she had stood by, supported through thick and thin, had turned into someone she barely recognized. All those years of sacrifice, the late nights, the hard work she had put in to help his business grow, seemed to count for nothing. To him, it was as if she had never contributed anything of value. The man who once looked at her with love now saw her as a mere obstacle in the way of his success. As John stood there in the courtroom, his eyes cold and dismissive, Martha could feel her world crumble around her. The emotional toll of being branded as someone who only cared about money was too much to bear. She had given up her career, her social life, and her financial stability to help him build his dream, only for him to turn around and paint her as the villain. The injustice was overwhelming, and for the first time in years, Martha felt truly invisible. She had been supportive, selfless, and dedicated, and yet here she was fighting for the recognition of her contributions. It was clear that John no longer saw her as the person. She was someone who had believed in his potential and worked tirelessly behind the scenes to help make it a reality. Instead, she was just a woman standing in his way, someone he could discard without a second thought. Martha had always been the kind of person who put others before herself, who believed in fairness and honesty. But now, as John's words rang in her ears, she realized that fairness and honesty had no place in his world anymore. He had taken everything from her, leaving her with nothing but the remnants of a life she had once thought was built on love and mutual respect. But Martha was not one to give up easily, especially when she knew she had been wronged. As the courtroom drama unfolded, Martha made a decision she would no longer let John's betrayal slide. She would not allow herself to be defined by his lies, nor would she let him walk away without facing the consequences of his actions. What John didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Martha had been preparing for this moment in silence. Long before their marriage had started to unravel, long before John's business success had begun to change their relationship, Martha had anticipated the possibility of betrayal. And so, during a trip to Paris, a place that had once been romantic and filled with promises of a future together, Martha had taken a precautionary step. With the help of a lawyer she had discreetly consulted, Martha had drawn up a prenuptial agreement. It wasn't because she didn't trust John, but because she knew how easily things could go wrong. And when they did, she would have something to protect herself, something that recognized her contributions and sacrifices in the business they had built together. The prenuptial agreement was carefully crafted to reflect Martha's financial contributions to John's startup, acknowledging her hard work and sacrifice over the years. She had worked multiple jobs to support the company during its early, lean years, and this agreement was meant to protect her share of the business that John had so readily dismissed. The agreement stated that Martha was entitled to 49% of the company's equity, recognizing the sweat equity she had invested her time, her money, and her unwavering support during the difficult early days of the startup. It also included a clause that ensured her ownership would remain separate from any divorce settlement, making it clear that her contributions were not to be swept aside just because the marriage was ending. Martha had kept the agreement hidden away, knowing that one day it might be her only form of protection against the betrayal she feared. She never imagined that she would have to use it, but as the divorce proceedings unfolded, the truth became undeniable. John had thought he could discard her, leaving her with nothing but the remnants of a broken marriage. But Martha was no fool. She had planned ahead, and now it was time to reveal the truth. When the right moment came, Martha presented the prenuptial agreement in court. The look on John's face as the agreement was handed to the judge was one of utter disbelief. He had no idea that Martha had taken such a step. He had underestimated her, thinking she would be too weak or too passive to fight back. But in that moment, as the courtroom gasped at the sight of the prenup, John realized just how wrong he had been. His entire defense, the foundation of his argument that Martha was only after his money, began to crumble. He had painted her as a greedy, opportunistic wife, but now, in front of the judge and everyone else, Martha's true role in the business was finally being acknowledged. The agreement spoke for itself. Martha was not some opportunistic woman out to get a piece of John's success. She had earned her share, and now the court was going to recognize it. John and his legal team were taken completely off guard. They had never expected this twist, and it was clear that they were scrambling to figure out how to respond. Martha, however, remained calm and composed as the judge carefully examined the agreement. The courtroom was filled with tension, and for the first time, Martha felt a sense of control. The pain of John's accusations, the hurt of being betrayed, began to fade as she realized that she had done what was necessary to protect herself. She had fought for her right to be recognized, for her contributions to be acknowledged, and for her future to be secure. And as the judge read through the document, Martha could feel the weight of the years of sacrifice being lifted off her shoulders. The reaction from John and his family was one of shock and disbelief. His mother, who had always been dismissive of Martha, looked as though she had just seen a ghost. The smug look on her face disappeared, replaced by a look of pure panic. John's face, once filled with confidence and arrogance, drained of color as he realized the gravity of the situation. His lawyer, who had been so sure of a quick victory, now found himself scrambling to defend a position that was no longer tenable. The courtroom, once filled with tension and hostility, became a place of revelation and accountability. And in that moment, Martha knew that she had won. It wasn't just about the money or the business. It was about regaining her dignity, her voice, and her place in the narrative of her own life. The prenup, something she had created out of foresight and necessity, was now her shield against the injustice that John had tried to impose on her. As the judge weighed the evidence and began to address the court, Martha could feel the weight of the years of sacrifice being lifted. The validation of her contributions, both emotional and financial, was more than just a victory. It was a vindication of everything she had worked for, everything she had given up. In the end, Martha's decision to secretly prepare the prenuptial agreement proved to be the turning point in her fight for justice. It was her weapon in the battle against John's betrayal, and it allowed her to stand up for herself in a way she had never done before. The courtroom, once a place of uncertainty and fear, became a place of empowerment for Martha. She had taken control of her life, her future, and her financial security. No longer would she allow herself to be dismissed, overlooked, or taken for granted. The agreement was a testament to her strength and determination, a symbol of her ability to fight for what was rightfully hers. And as the legal battle continued, Martha walked out of the courtroom with her head held high, knowing that she had done what was necessary to protect herself and her future. The triumph of justice, Martha's legal victory, and the reclamation of her identity. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with the weight of years of sacrifice and betrayal. Martha stood there, her heart pounding in her chest as she faced the final chapter of a legal battle that had torn apart everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and fairness. For 7 long years, she had given her all, sacrificing her career, her independence, and her sense of self to support John, her husband, in building a business that he had once promised would be their shared success. But as the years wore on and the business grew, Martha found herself increasingly invisible. She had been the silent partner, working tirelessly behind the scenes, never once asking for recognition. All she wanted was for John to appreciate her contribution and to one day share in the success that they had both worked so hard to achieve. Instead, she was left with nothing but her devotion and the empty promises of a future that never came. The moment John had filed for divorce had been the breaking point for Martha. His accusations in court that she was nothing more than a gold digger had stung more deeply than anything she had ever imagined. She had given everything for him, for their shared dream, and yet he saw her as nothing more than a liability, a burden that he could easily discard. The pain was excruciating, but it was also a wake-up call. Martha knew she could no longer stand by silently. She had to fight for herself, for the life she had sacrificed, and for the recognition she deserved. The first step was revealing the prenuptial agreement that she had quietly prepared years ago, a document that John had never fully understood or respected. The prenup was Martha's shield, a tool she had kept hidden for the very reason that she feared John might one day try to take everything from her. It was not about money. It was about fairness, about ensuring that her contributions to the company, both financial and emotional, would be acknowledged. The agreement explicitly stated that Martha was entitled to 49% ownership of the company, a recognition of her role in its creation and growth. John had never seen it coming. He had dismissed her for so long, believing she was simply playing the role of the supportive wife without understanding the depth of her involvement. When Martha presented the prenup in court, everything shifted. The look on John's face as the reality of the situation set in was one of shock and disbelief. In that moment, Martha knew she had turned the tide. She had fought back, and she had won. The legal battle was long and grueling. John's lawyers, confident that they would easily secure a favorable settlement for him, were caught off guard by the strength of Martha's case. Her legal team, led by a sharp and determined lawyer, had systematically presented her case, highlighting her financial contributions, her sacrifices, and the role she had played in the early days of the startup. Martha had worked multiple jobs to support John's business when it was struggling to stay afloat. She had given up her own career and dreams to ensure that the company had the resources it needed to succeed. All of that had been erased, dismissed as insignificant by John. But now, as the prenuptial agreement was entered into evidence, the court could no longer ignore Martha's contributions. The narrative that John had built of being a self-made man who had done it all on his own was shattered. It was clear that this success had not been his alone. The courtroom erupted with murmurs as the prenup was reviewed, and Martha could feel the weight of her years of sacrifice lifting off her shoulders. For the first time, she was being seen. She was being heard. It was no longer just John's company, John's success, and John's story. This was her story, too. And the court, recognizing the value of her contributions, ruled in her favor. She was entitled to 49% of the company, a decision that would give her not only a financial stake in the business, but also a sense of ownership over the future she had helped to build. Despite the victory, Martha couldn't help but feel a sense of mixed emotions. The win was a vindication, a long overdue acknowledgement of her hard work and sacrifices. But it also came with a bittersweet realization that no amount of money or legal victory could undo the damage that had been done to her personal life. The years of neglect, the growing distance between her and John, and the pain of being constantly overlooked, those were scars that couldn't be erased by a court ruling. The betrayal still stung, and the emotional toll would linger long after the legal proceedings had ended. But in the midst of that pain, Martha found a sense of peace. She had fought for herself, and in doing so, she had reclaimed her worth. The victory also marked the beginning of a new chapter in Martha's life. With her 49% ownership in the company, Martha now had the means to build something of her own, something that was hers and hers alone. She had spent so many years supporting John's dream, putting her own aspirations on hold, and now it was time for her to step into the spotlight. She had learned valuable lessons throughout her journey, lessons about sacrifice, about the importance of standing up for oneself, and about the strength that comes from adversity. Martha was no longer the woman who had silently supported her husband from the background. She was a force in her own right, a woman who had fought for what was hers and had come out victorious. In the months that followed the trial, Martha used her newfound position to reshape her future. She began working with her legal team to restructure her relationship with the company, ensuring that her stake in the business was recognized and respected. She also began to pursue her own professional goals, something she had neglected for far too long. She took on consulting projects, using her expertise to help other women navigate the business world and secure the recognition they deserved. Her experience had given her a unique perspective, and she was determined to help other women avoid the same mistakes she had made. She became an advocate for women in business, sharing her story and encouraging others to fight for their rightful place at the table. As Martha's life began to take shape in new and exciting ways, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had reclaimed her identity, her voice, and her sense of worth. The emotional and financial support she had given to John's business was no longer a source of shame or regret. It was a part of her story, a story of perseverance, resilience, and ultimately empowerment. And as she looked forward to the future, Martha knew that her journey had only just begun. She had learned the hard way that the road to success was rarely straightforward, and that the people you trust the most can sometimes be the ones who let you down. But she had also learned that it was never too late to take control of your own destiny. Martha's story is a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for yourself, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Her legal victory was not just about securing a financial stake in a business. It was about reclaiming her life, her identity, and her sense of self-worth. It was about proving that, no matter how much you give to others, you're always deserving of recognition and respect. In the end, Martha's triumph was more than just a legal victory. It was the reclaiming of her future, the rediscovery of her strength, and the restoration of her dignity. Rebuilding and reclaiming success. Martha's new beginning after years of silence, sacrifice, and betrayal. Martha stood at the threshold of a new chapter in her life, one that she had fought long and hard for. The legal victory that granted her 49% ownership in the business she had helped build was not just a financial win, it was a personal renaissance. For the first time in years, Martha felt seen, valued, and most importantly, free. The years spent working tirelessly behind the scenes for John's business had left her depleted, both emotionally and financially. She had poured everything into a vision that had never truly been hers. But now, with her legal victory, Martha had not only reclaimed what was rightfully hers, but she was also given the opportunity to forge a path of her own, one that was driven by her passion, expertise, and, above all, her belief in herself. In the aftermath of the divorce and the legal proceedings, Martha could have chosen to retreat into the background, continue living a quiet life of quiet regret. But that wasn't her style. The fire that had kept her going through years of hardship supporting John, putting her own ambitions on hold, was now rekindled. She decided to channel the energy that had once been spent building someone else's dream into something she could call her own. Martha, having worked in the finance industry for many years, knew that her expertise was valuable, as she recognized an urgent need in the market for financial guidance tailored to women entrepreneurs. So, with newfound confidence, she started her own financial consulting business. The goal was simple: to help other women navigate the complexities of business ownership, secure their financial futures, and protect their assets. For so long, Martha had worked tirelessly for John, only to watch her efforts be diminished, her financial contributions overshadowed. Now, it was time to empower others in the way she had wished she had been empowered. She understood firsthand how important it was for women to not just build businesses, but to ensure their hard work, ideas, and financial contributions were protected. Building her own company was no easy task. Martha had never imagined starting from scratch again, let alone in her 60s. But as she began to lay the foundation for her consulting firm, she quickly realized that she had everything she needed to succeed. Her years of experience, the lessons learned through both success and failure, and her deep understanding of the financial world gave her a unique edge. Martha knew how to navigate the business world. She knew the importance of strategic planning, financial security, and how to build relationships that would elevate her business. However, what set her apart from the countless other consultants was her story, her journey through adversity, her ability to rebuild from the ground up, and her unwavering commitment to helping other women avoid the same pitfall she had fallen into. Word of mouth spread quickly as Martha's reputation began to grow. Clients were drawn to her not only because of her vast knowledge and experience, but because they saw in her a woman who had fought for what she believed in, someone who understood the importance of financial independence and security. Her consulting business became a space where women could come to receive advice on everything from building investment portfolios to protecting business assets. Martha's approach was rooted in her personal philosophy. Success is not just about making money, it's about building a legacy, protecting what's yours, and ensuring that the future is secure for yourself and those who depend on you. Martha's newfound success was not just a testament to her business acumen, but also to her resilience. She had weathered the storm of betrayal, fought through a painful divorce, and emerged from the ashes not broken, but stronger than ever. She had taken the lessons of her past and used them as the foundation for her future. But even as her business flourished, she didn't forget where she had come from or the journey that had brought her here. It was her deep empathy for women in business that motivated her every day, driving her to work harder, to push further, and to expand her reach. A year after she had started her consulting firm, Martha received recognition she had never anticipated. She was named one of Forbes' entrepreneurs to watch. The honor was a reflection of her hard work, her commitment to helping women secure their financial futures, and her ability to build something meaningful after years of being in the shadows. For Martha, being recognized by such a prestigious publication wasn't just about the accolades, it was a validation of everything she had endured. It was proof that, no matter how many years she had spent building someone else's dream, she could still forge her own path and achieve incredible success. The recognition also highlighted the importance of her mission to empower women entrepreneurs to take control of their financial futures and break free from the financial inequalities that often hold them back. Martha's name became synonymous with empowerment. Her work was featured in numerous business magazines, and she was invited to speak at conferences and workshops, sharing her story and offering financial advice to women across the country. The more she spoke, the more she realized how much her story resonated with others. Women were eager to hear about her journey, to learn how she had overcome adversity and built a thriving business from the ground up. And as she stood in front of these women, sharing her experiences, she realized just how far she had come from a woman who had lost her sense of self to a woman who was now leading a successful business, creating opportunities for others, and building a legacy of her own. For Martha, the recognition was a reminder that it's never too late to rebuild. The road hadn't been easy, but had been worth every single struggle. She had reclaimed not only her financial security, but also her sense of identity, her voice, and her power. Through her business, she was able to pass on the lessons she had learned and help other women avoid the mistakes she had made. She knew firsthand how easily women could become invisible in the business world, how easily their contributions could be overlooked, but she also knew that with the right tools, guidance, and support, they could rise above those challenges and succeed on their own terms. As Martha's consulting firm continued to grow, so did her influence in the financial world. She expanded her services, offering workshops and seminars for women entrepreneurs, helping them navigate the intricacies of securing funding, building wealth, and managing risk. She built partnerships with other organizations that were committed to supporting women in business, and she started mentoring young women who were just starting their entrepreneurial journeys. Her success wasn't just about what she had achieved for herself, it was about lifting others up along the way. The impact Martha had on the women she worked with was immeasurable. Many of them had been in similar situations, struggling to balance family life and business, working in industries that didn't recognize their contributions, and trying to break through glass ceilings that were too often reinforced by outdated attitudes and beliefs. Martha's story showed them that it was possible to rebuild, to find success at any age, and to create a future that was theirs to control. Through her work, she gave them the confidence and tools they needed to take charge of their financial futures and build the businesses of their dreams. Looking back on the journey, Martha realized that the legal victory that had once seemed like the turning point in her life was merely the beginning. The real victory came in the form of self-discovery, in finding her voice after years of silence, and in building a business that not only gave her financial independence, but also allowed her to help other women do the same. In the end, Martha's story wasn't just about overcoming adversity, it was about creating something meaningful that would last long after her time. It was about leaving a legacy of empowerment and showing women everywhere that success doesn't have to be defined by others' terms, it can be whatever you make of it. Rebirth and rediscovery. Martha's journey to confidence and empowerment. Martha had always been strong, but the years leading up to her rebirth had tested her resilience in ways she never imagined. When she started out, she had the world at her feet, an accomplished woman with a promising career and a solid financial future. But the choices she made, driven by love and a shared dream with her husband, had led her down a path of sacrifice and self-neglect. She had given up her career, poured her heart and soul into building someone else's dream, and quietly accepted a role in the background of her own life. The emotional toll of those years weighed heavily on her, and for a time, she couldn't see beyond the sacrifices she had made for a man who, in the end, never truly saw her value. When John filed for divorce and humiliated her in front of the court, it was the final straw. The betrayal, the accusations, and the public dismissal of her contributions forced Martha to confront everything she had been ignoring for so long. It was then that she made the pivotal decision to fight back, not just in court, but for herself. She knew she had been wronged, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized that the biggest injustice wasn't just what John had done to her, it was what she had done to herself. For too long, she had silenced her own needs, her own desires, and her own dreams in the name of supporting someone else's vision. But no more. The legal victory that followed was not just about securing a share of the company she had helped build, it was the start of Martha's personal transformation. She had won what was legally hers, but more importantly, she had found her voice. The silence that had surrounded her for years, the feeling of being invisible in her own life, began to fade. Martha realized that the woman she was before all the sacrifices, The woman with a thriving career and a sense of purpose had never really disappeared. She had just been buried beneath the weight of self-doubt, exhaustion, and misplaced loyalty. As she began to rebuild, Martha found herself not only re-entering the workforce, but rediscovering her self-worth. The business world, which had once felt like a space where her contributions were minimized, now felt like a stage on which she could once again shine. The confidence that had been stolen from her slowly started to return as she began to see the true value of her skills, her experience, and her knowledge. What once felt like an insurmountable mountain of lost time and opportunity now seemed like the foundation for a new beginning. With her legal victory and a fresh sense of purpose, Martha stepped back into the world of business this time, on her own terms. Starting her own financial consulting firm was a daunting challenge, but Martha had learned how to fight through adversity. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she was prepared to face it head-on. Martha's business was not just about providing financial advice. It was about helping women entrepreneurs who, like her, had been sidelined, overlooked, or dismissed. She knew firsthand how hard it could be for women to navigate a world that often didn't take them seriously, where their contributions were undervalued and their successes overshadowed. She made it her mission to ensure that no other woman would have to endure the same struggle she had. Her consulting firm offered more than just financial guidance. It was a platform for empowerment, a space where women could find the support, resources, and advice they needed to protect their businesses, their assets, and their futures. Martha's decision to focus on women entrepreneurs wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. She had spent so many years working behind the scenes, giving everything she had to a man who never truly appreciated her. But now, with her own firm, she was able to make a difference in the lives of other women, offering them the knowledge and support she had never received. She had been given the opportunity to build something meaningful, something that wasn't just about profit, but about creating real, lasting impact. Each client she worked with reminded her of the power of reclaiming one's voice and taking control of one's future. For the first time in years, Martha felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. As the months passed, Martha began to gain recognition in the financial world. Her consulting firm flourished, and her reputation as a trusted advisor grew. But the real victory wasn't in the growing list of clients or the financial success of her business. It was in the confidence and pride she found in herself. The validation she had longed for, the acknowledgement of her contributions, finally came in the form of respect, not just from others, but from herself. Martha no longer had to prove her worth to anyone. She had done that already. Her journey had been difficult, but it had shaped her into the woman. She had become someone who was unafraid to stand up for herself, who knew her value, and who was determined to make a difference in the world. A year after launching her consulting firm, Martha was named one of Forbes' Entrepreneurs to Watch. The honor was a culmination of everything she had worked for, proof that no matter how many setbacks she had faced, no matter how many years she had spent in the background, she could still rise to the top. Being recognized by Forbes was a moment of triumph, not just for Martha, but for every woman who had ever felt overlooked or underestimated. It was a reminder that success was not defined by age, by gender, or by the mistakes of the past. Success was about perseverance, about the strength to keep going even when the road seemed impossible, and about finding the courage to pursue your dreams on your own terms. For Martha, the recognition was more than just an award. It was a symbol of the life she had rebuilt. It was a recognition of her resilience, her determination, and her ability to reinvent herself after years of sacrifice. But more importantly, it was a reminder that age was not a barrier to success. Martha had rebuilt her career and her life at a time when many people might have given up or resigned themselves to the idea that their best years were behind them. But Martha knew better. She knew that it was never too late to start again, to rediscover your passion, and to build something that was yours. Through her work, Martha became a mentor, a role model, and a source of inspiration for women everywhere. She showed them that it was possible to overcome adversity, to reclaim your life, and to find success at any age. She understood that women often faced unique challenges in business, and she used her platform to advocate for equal opportunities, financial security, and empowerment. Her consulting firm grew, and with it her influence. She began to travel the country, speaking at conferences and workshops, sharing her story, and teaching women how to protect their businesses and secure their financial futures. Martha had found her purpose, and she was determined to help other women do the same. Looking back on her journey, Martha could see how far she had come. The woman who once felt invisible and dismissed was now a force to be reckoned with, standing tall as a successful entrepreneur and an advocate for women in business. The pain of the past, the betrayals, the sacrifices, those things had shaped her, but they did not define her. What defined her now was her strength, her resilience, and her ability to rise above the challenges she had faced. She had learned that success was not just about money or recognition, it was about reclaiming your power, finding your voice, and using that voice to make a difference in the world. Martha's journey wasn't just a story of financial success, it was a story of self-discovery, empowerment, and the rediscovery of her worth. At an age when many might think it was too late to make a change, Martha proved that it's never too late to take control of your life and your future. She had rebuilt her career, reinvented herself, and found happiness and pride in everything she had achieved. And as she looked to the future, she knew that her best years were still ahead of her. The journey was far from over. Martha was just getting started. This narrative captures Martha's emotional and professional transformation, highlighting her journey from self-doubt to self-empowerment. It emphasizes her ability to rebuild her life and career, showing that it's never too late to pursue your dreams, regardless of age or circumstances. The journey of Martha is a powerful reminder that it's never too late to reclaim your life, pursue your passions, and rebuild from any setback. No matter our age, we all have the potential to rediscover our strength and redefine our future. Life, with its inevitable ups and downs, often requires us to make sacrifices, sometimes even putting our dreams on hold for others. But the key lesson here is that, even after years of sacrifice or feeling invisible, we can still find our voice and assert our worth. Martha's story teaches us that no matter how much we give to others, we must never lose sight of our own value. She gave everything to support her husband's dream, only to be dismissed and humiliated. Yet, through resilience and determination, she fought for herself, rediscovered her confidence, and went on to create a successful consulting business that empowered other women to protect their financial futures. The message is clear. Age is not a barrier to reinvention or success. Martha, in her 60s, proves that life's later years can be the perfect time to pursue new dreams, use the wisdom we've accumulated, and start fresh. It's a reminder that we should never let the past define us, and that our experiences, both good and bad, can become the foundation for something even better. It's also a lesson in the importance of self-worth. At times, we might feel invisible or unappreciated, but we must never stop recognizing the value we bring to the world. Martha found that true success isn't just about wealth or recognition. It's about finding fulfillment, taking control of your destiny, and empowering others along the way. Whether you're just beginning a new venture or navigating the complexities of life in your later years, remember, you have the strength to rise again, to take bold steps, and to create a life that truly reflects your worth. Just like Martha, we all have the power to transform our lives, no matter the stage we're in. Thank you for watching. We hope Martha's story inspired you to rediscover your self-worth and empowered you to take control of your future. Please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to Stories TH for more content that helps you find strength, purpose, and self-love. Stay strong, and remember, your self-worth is worth fighting for.